This is Math 95, Quiz 5 Topics, finding inputs and outputs of a function from its graph. When we have a function written in function notation, we see f of x equals y. In other words, what's inside the parentheses is the input, and what's on the other side of the equals is the output. All right, our first question asks, the graph of a function f is shown. Find f of -1. And so this is saying that our input, or our x value, is -1, and we want to know what the output, or the y value, is there. So let's go to our graph over here and go to -1 on the y-axis. Here it is. And so what function value corresponds to that? If I go up here on my graph, I see that this point at -1 on the x-axis corresponds to a 2 on the y-axis. So I would say f of -1 equals 2. That's its value. All right, the second question asks, find one value of x for which f of x equals 5. Now it's telling us that our output, or our y value, is 5, and we want to know what possible x value would give us this y value. So go to the y-axis, look at 5, and say, all right, what function values are there? I'm noticing two different places on my function that have a y value of 5. Here's one of them. Here's another right here. And so what are the x values that were put in to get 5? Well, it looks like 1. So here the x equals 1. And over here the x equals -2. And so I would answer the question, f of x equals 5. Our output is 5 when x equals 1. So that would be sufficient for your answer in ALEKS. Or you may put when x equals -2. Either one of those is correct. Okay, our second example says the graph of a function h is shown here. Find h of -2. So this means the function, what is the function's value at -2 for our x? So since -2 is our input, go along the x-axis to -2 and see what y value corresponds to that on our function. Here it is right here. And so it looks like the y value is 1. And so we would say h of -2 equals 1. The second question says, find one value of x for which h of x equals -1. Now we know that the output is -1, so this is the y value. We want to find what x value would give us a y of -1. On our y-axis, go to -1, and we can see that there really is only one place on the graph of our function that has a y value of -1, and that's where x equals 0. And so we'd say h of x equals -1 when x equals 0. And that's our answer.